Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Souji and today we're starting a series on my trip to Greece and Turkey with Celebrity Silhouette. Today we're gonna kick it off by talking about how I got to Athens, my time in Athens, and also at the end why I wouldn't go back. We started off our journey at JFK Terminal 1 in the Turkish Airlines Lounge, where we got to start off the trip with Turkish food. As you can see here, there was a rice pilaf, a Turkish tzatziki called a cacik, a baba ganoush, hummus, and a dessert called a revani, which I think is called a basbousa in other parts of the Mediterranean. It's essentially this honey syrup cake. We flew premium economy in Lufthansa there with the stopover in Munich. This was my first time flying premium economy, so I was actually surprised by how much wider the seats were and how much further back they reclined. The food was a little upsetting though, as you can see here. It was a bland pasta with corn kind of meal. Side note, on the way back, we flew with economy on Lufthansa and the food was way better. It was actually neat to be able to see the Greek islands out the window while we were landing, like you can see in this photo. When we got to Greece, Lufthansa actually lost my bag, but I'll get to that at the end of this video. We took a taxi to our hotel. There's supposed to be a fixed rate from the airport to the city center or from the port to the city center, but I'll get to that also at the end of the video, why a lot of the taxis seem to be scamming people there. As we drove in, I realized how much Athens city center actually looked like Hyderabad or like the outskirts of an Indian city. Our hotel was called Villa Brown Ermu and it was an amazing stay. When we arrived, I was a bit flustered because I had lost my bag, but they gave us some Prosecco while we were waiting for our room to be ready. And they offered us lots of advice on what we could see in the area. So we were in the heart of the city, so about a 15-minute walk from the Acropolis and the flea markets and the major square there, called Syntagmou, I think. I chatted with the hotel staff in Greek as well, because if you don't remember, I learned Greek before going there. I have a whole video on that here. And they were helping me out with some phrases. So like I went down to fill my water bottle at the reception and I was trying to say it in Greek and they helped me so I could say Borate na yemis to bukalimu, or Afto to xenodohio ine kalo. After dropping the bags off in the hotel, we set out for our first meal. We just picked a local taverna around the corner called Ella Urban Greek Cuisine. For those of you who don't know, a taverna is like the traditional Greek restaurant where they feed you traditional Greek food and it's like kind of sit down and you order stuff family style usually. I got the dolmadakia over the Greek yogurt, which as you can see was so hefty and filling. And it was literally the best dolma I've ever had in my life. They also gave us a free dessert of a Greek delight, which is kind of like a Turkish delight. The people there told me there's a difference, but they didn't know what it was between a Greek delight and a Turkish delight. But this was a theme that we noticed in a lot of tavernas, is they give you free dessert and sometimes like a drink at the end. So we got to try a lot of different Greek desserts that we had never heard about just by going to these restaurants. On our second day in Greece, we woke up bright and early for a mythological tour of Athens. We essentially wanted to see all the major sculptures and temples and the Acropolis and everything through like a mythological lens, where the tour guide would talk about the different Greek gods and their significance for the Greek people, or the ancient Greek people. We started at the Arch of Hadrian, which is right outside where the Acropolis is. And then we walked up a lot of monuments and altars to get all the way to the top. So Acropolis means city of heights. So essentially it was like a mini city built up on top of a mountain in Athens. And all the people used to go there for like worship or for like activities and things like that. It was quite a long trek up, but the tour guide basically stopped at every single monument to explain the significance. So we learned about like an altar of Poseidon or Hestia and all these different gods that had altars on the way up to the Acropolis. Now, having read Percy Jackson, I actually knew most of the stories that she was talking about. So I was like a student just like me, like I know the answer and answering all of her questions. So side note, as you can see from this video, it kind of gets steeper and steeper as you go up. So I think after 2 weeks in Greece and Turkey, I would say this is a trip you want to do when you're still fit and able, because there were lots of steep walks and slippery marble flooring in a lot of these ruins, and we were seeing people falling constantly. Like not even old people, but like young people also were just slipping and falling. On our way up, this was one of the famous theaters we stopped at. It's called the Odeon of Herodes Atticus. The stage on it actually looks modern because they still do concerts there. So when we were there, they were preparing for a concert that would take place that night. You can see how crowded it was at the attractions even in late September, which is the tail end of the peak season. We finally got our first glimpse of the Parthenon after we walked up all those stairs, and it was pretty impressive. The beauty of the Parthenon, as the tour guide told us, is that while the pillars may look straight, they're actually not. They actually round out like this and are kind of curved, so the whole thing is a big optical illusion. Our next stop on the tour was through the Plaka Old City, which is located at the base of the Acropolis, and it's considered the most beautiful neighborhood in Athens. On the other side of that is the ancient Agora, which is like the ancient town square and the administrative center. It had like a bunch of ruins of administrative buildings, one of which was reconstructed, and then also a huge temple for Hephaestus. One of the funny things I read about Greece before going was that there are so many archaeological sites there that whenever the Greek government tries to build any type of transit and dig underground, they uncover a new ruin or monument or something. So you can see here, there's literally a train that was built under the ancient Agora. Here's another example of ruins that are walled off inside the literal subway station. So I booked this tour on TripAdvisor, and I would highly recommend it for anyone who likes Greek mythology. I already knew most of the stories from Percy Jackson, but it was nice to relive them by being there and listening to the significance of those gods to ancient Greece. So an example of that is the tour guide was talking about whenever people went off to war, they would pray to Nike, the goddess of victory, and then we would pass like a Nike altar where she would tell that story. So that was the end of our tour. And we went off to look for lunch somewhere nearby, and we made the tourist mistake of eating on the main street right across the Agora. Everyone told me to always eat on the side streets because they're cheaper and actually have better food than like the touristy restaurants on the main street. But we were so hot, and there was this one restaurant that had this like cold mist blowing on everyone, so I was like, we have to eat there. As usual, at the end, they gave us a free dessert of this souffle kind of thing. I don't even know the names of most of these desserts because they're just something that the restaurant's making in the back. They also gave us this digestive cocktail at the end with red wine and amaretto. So it was a great end to the tour. At night, we walked through the touristy area under the Acropolis, and we ended up having one of the best meals of our entire trip. So as mentioned before, we went down a side alley to find a restaurant that looked super authentic. This one was called Efkaris restaurant, and I ordered the grilled halloumi and the skordalia. I've only ever had the skordalia, which is like Greek mashed potatoes in New York City, but this one was way better than whatever they're serving here. I chatted with the waiter in Greek for a bit, and so he was like, oh, for you get a free dessert. But I mean, I knew they were gonna give us free dessert anyway. But this dessert was some kind of sponge cake or cornbread kind of thing that they were just serving out in slices to everyone. I really wish I knew what these desserts were because they were amazing, but I think they were just their in-house creations. After dinner, we did some shopping for souvenirs at the Athens Agora flea market, which felt kind of like an Indian bazaar to me. And we ended the night by looking at the Acropolis from our hotel rooftop, which was one of the selling points of the hotel. So now let's get into why I wouldn't go back to Athens. Overall, Athens was an amazing city and there were so many nice people and our hotel was awesome. But I feel like getting to Athens, like the airport sucked and the taxi drivers were constantly trying to scam us. So here's what my experience was like. We transferred with Lufthansa through Munich on the way there and we only had like an hour layover. So we were literally running through the airport to get to the other terminal and we had to go through customs as well. So we made it because they halted the flight for us, but my bag didn't make it. And so then I get to the Athens airport and First of all, no one spoke English. So luckily I learned some Greek, so I was running around like, "Den eho to valitsismu," and people are like, "Oh, you have to go to this like back area with like where the bags will be." The bag people didn't know where my bag was, so they were like, "Oh, it's on claim 4." I go to claim 4, which is empty. There's no bags. And so I ended up not even getting my bag while we were at the airport. We went back another time. I didn't get my bags because although they said the bag had been delivered to the airport, I guess these Greeks were just on lunch break or something for the whole day, because I didn't get an email till midnight, our first day there, that my bag had been delivered. So after our mythological tour, we went back to the airport a second time, and then finally I got my bag the night before we were supposed to get on the cruise. So I was kind of freaking out because if I didn't get my bag, I would just end up on this 12-day cruise without any like toiletries, like half my clothing gone, etc. So I would say that these European airlines, because this happened to me before on KLM last year, they suck at transferring your bag, but they're very good at delivering you your bag at the end. So I think Lufthansa delivered my bag properly, but Athens airport just like kept it in the back for like 8 hours for some reason. So the airport and everyone at the airport was so rude. Like I almost started crying at one point because it was just so frustrating. Like no one cared that, hey, a bunch of people have lost their bags coming in from the New York flight. The other bad experience we had there was the taxi drivers in Athens. So as I mentioned before, there's a flat fare of 45 euros that's supposed to take you from the airport into the city center, or from the city center to the cruise port, and also cruise port to airport. So those like big distance areas, they shouldn't charge you more than 45 euros. And that includes an extra passenger, all your bags, tolls, pets, everything. I did my research before going. While we were on the cruise, we heard stories from other people about how they had already gotten scammed. The worst being one couple who said that the driver was literally holding their luggage hostage in the trunk unless they paid him 500 euros. So when we were disembarking from the cruise on our last day, there was just this like long line of taxis, and you get off the ship and then you just go to the next taxi. Our guy literally took our luggage immediately and put it in the trunk before we could even ask, "Hey, how much is the fare?" So then he tells us 90 euros. And we only got that reduced because I spoke to him in Greek. And I said like, "Hey, I thought the flat fare was 45. And then he apparently can't speak English either because he starts talking through Google Translate and like showing it to me. And he's like, "Yeah, it's 45, but that doesn't include like the tolls and the extra person and the luggage and everything." But he ended up bringing it down from 90 euros to 70 euros. So then when we got to the airport, like I was so angry at this point. But he was asking us to pay him in cash too, which is so shady. But rightfully so, we're like, we don't have cash. We didn't. It was at the end of the trip and we were heading home. And I knew beforehand from my Greek teacher that they have to accept credit card everywhere. And if they don't, they have to tell you beforehand. So he asked us for cash and we say, "No, we don't have it." So he was like, "Okay, fine," and got out his like tap machine for the credit card. So we ended up paying the 70 euros because he still had our luggage and to not anger him. But afterwards, when we got to the airport past security and we're sitting in the lounge waiting, we talked to a couple other people from our cruise who were also flying home that day, and they got scammed even worse than us. Like one guy paid 150 euros for his taxi, another couple paid like 200. So just from me speaking Greek, we actually got a little bit lucky and paid only 70 euros. So yeah, all in all, I think every time we stepped off the boat and when we were in Athens, I felt like everyone was just trying to scam us constantly. So I think Greece for me is like a once in a lifetime kind of trip. But the actual cruise was amazing and all the ports were awesome. So I will definitely go over them in my next few videos. So stay tuned. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.